You're listening to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast covering the wild world of college football. On tap for today are hot takes, controversy, and analysis on your favorite team. Here's your host, Hampton Sipper, in 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Pigskin Cafe. Hey, we're grateful that you've tuned in again. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm Chase, got my brother Graham and my friend Hampton here. And hey, if this is not your first time, just continue, man. Please just like the video, share the video with a friend. And if you're new and hadn't followed, drop a follow. So, hey, let's jump right into it. We're a college football show. We love talking about college football. We think that's what we do well. That's why we do it. We've kind of trimmed this down to talk about what we're good at. And so, hey, we're going to recap a game that happened just, I guess, was it 2 nights ago? 2 nights ago.
Monday night.
And then we'll look forward to what's going to happen here in week 2 of college football. And I still don't know if I love the whole week 0, then week 1, then week 2, because it feels like it's week 3, but you got to call it week 2. So let's jump right into it. Let's recap Duke Clemson. So, Hampton, I know there's probably some stuff that needs to be said, that needs to be talked about. So I'm going to actually go to Graham first. Graham, give me your thoughts of the game, and then we'll open it up for Hampton's monologue.
That was masterful, by the way.
Yeah, which was Shakespearean. So, Graham, you go first.
Hey, I'm glad to be back. I was not on the pod last time. We'll address a little bit more of that. Yeah, we'll address a little more of that later on the pod. But we talked about this last week of Clemson and Duke. We thought it would be a close game, knowing that Duke had a great season and overperformed last year, and Clemson was very underwhelming last year. We did think Clemson would win, but we knew it would be close. And for the most part, the game was close until the fourth quarter, and then Duke took off. I think that really the story of the game isn't, the offense for Clemson was very lackluster. I think that special teams was the biggest blunder for Clemson. They got two kicks blocked. Two kicks blocked. They fumbled a punt. It was just disaster after disaster. They were going in to score twice, didn't go away with any points, and then getting the ball back after stopping Duke around the 50-yard line, and they punt it. Clemson, has Butterfingers, lets it go. I think to me that's the biggest story of the game is how poorly Clemson seemed to be prepared. It seemed like the situation was just overwhelming for them, and for feel like the field goal blockers and the punt returners. That's something that you can kind of practice at a level similar to games, and the fact of they're going to rush whenever we try and kick it, and we know whenever they're going to punt it to us, there's going to be people running right at us, and credit Duke for taking advantage, but man, Clemson really they let it slip away time and time again. And when you look at it, it was 28-7, which is a little bit bigger of a margin I think we would have, anticipated and probably it felt like. But it was all because of Clemson, blundering, possession after possession, and it, whether you believe in momentum or not, Clemson, whenever they seemed to get momentum, they immediately handed it back to Duke and even gave them a push in the other direction of, hey, take it even further. So, but credit to Duke. Duke really came to play, and that was probably the biggest home game they've had, in years. Yeah. I think the answer for this, and then I'll throw it to Hampton, is how does this affect Clemson's season? In the fact of we kind of expected them not to make the ball playoff. We didn't think they were the best team in the ACC. Shout out to Florida State. But when you're losing to Duke, regardless of how good of a team Duke is in football, that's going to raise some questions amongst the fan base of what is the future and what is the trajectory of Clemson. And so the real question I have is, has Clemson already peaked? Have we seen the best that Clemson has to offer? And now are they leveling out to the years before Dabo Swinney? So, Hampton, I want to bring you into this. I know that you watched that game. We were talking about it. Give us a little bit of breakdown of the offense, because I think that's really important for Clemson's sake. And also want to say, Hampton, shout out to Riley Leonard. You suck. All right, go ahead.
Long-time listener of the show.
long time follower of the Pigskin Cafe. Well, Graham, not only did we talk during the game, we basically watched it together with me being 20 seconds ahead, which was a wonderful experience for me. Maybe not so much for you.
And Hampton, can you unpack what that means? Because people who are listening probably don't. If they don't know the context of that, it doesn't make any sense. Unpack that for a second.
I would be happy to, Chase. So, a running joke in our friend group. I'm the only one that apparently has satellite
Hadn't cut the
in
cord.
our friend group. Everybody else has streaming. I can just say anywhere. Yeah, pretty much. I'm one of the lone survivors.
Hampton, I said that you hadn't cut the cord.
I hadn't cut the cord. No, I have not. So I am always ahead of them in every sport. Like I say OMG, and they're like, "Dadgummit, you spoiled it for me." So
Hey,
we had our fantasy draft.
Hampton's got his finger. He's got those trigger fingers. I mean, he is ready to type it out, especially like in those big oh, this is the game-changing moment. Hampton is sure to throw it in there 30 seconds before the rest of us see it. We're still watching the last play, and Hampton's, oh my gosh!
Well, I want to share it with you guys. You know, we used to watch them in college and everything, so it's a way of staying connected. But we had our fantasy draft Monday night, and we were all on a call together, and there were a couple plays like when Riley Leonard went on that 50-yard run and is going to the end zone, like I'm screaming, go, 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 and Graham hadn't even seen the ball snap yet. So that is a little bit of a running joke in our friend group. That makes for a ton of fun on a college football Saturday or Monday in this case. But Graham, I do want to echo. I'm going to answer your question about the Clemson offense, but I also want to echo what you said about Duke because I think we need to give them credit first and foremost. Mike Elko and the job he's done there. I mean, this is year 2. They won 9 games last year. You just knocked off a top 10 team, and you beat them by 21 points.
Was a top 10 team.
Was a top 10 team. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Graham. And they did it on the back of Riley Leonard, who wasn't, I would say, prolific through the air, but he made big throws in high leverage situations, and he really ran the ball well. I mean, that touchdown he had to put them up, I believe, 13-7, which is a very impressive play. It was a poor tackling effort by Clemson, but really impressive play. And now Duke is kind of primed to, I think, maybe exceed expectations of them going into the year. I think everybody thought they were going to be a solid team. I mean, Graham, you and I did, as you mentioned. I know a lot of the media was like Clemson, they were favored by 13, they're going to blow them out. You and I did not feel that way. We felt that it would be close, but we definitely did not see it being a 21-point margin of victory for Duke.
Or the fact that Clemson would only score 7 points.
That too. So now let's get to Clemson. And everyone needs to buckle up and sit, grab a chair. We're going to have a campfire moment because Clemson's in trouble. And I don't mean to overreact from one game because they very well, from here, could rally the troops and win the national championship. But I will bet my next 10 paychecks that does not happen. And I'm sure you would. Unfortunately, I can't do a virtual handshake. But what was so alarming to me watching that game, I mean, we all watched Clemson last year, and everybody blamed their offensive issues on DJ Uiagalelei, who is now in Corvallis, Oregon, playing at Oregon State. And I don't know if you caught the game on Sunday, guys. I know it was San Jose State. I get that. DJ, you look like a totally different player after getting away from Dabo and Clemson. Okay? And then when you see Monday night what happened in the offensive product that was put on the field, they hired Garrett Riley in the offseason from TCU. I watched that offense last year. Now, when they didn't show up in the national championship game one bit, but throughout the year, they were an explosive offense. I can guarantee you that offense he ran on Monday night was not Garrett Riley's offense. That was Garrett Riley running Clemson and Dabo's offense. And they were unexplosive, or they were not explosive at all. They had to be very efficient and had these long sustaining drives because simply either A, they're not evaluating correctly because they're not. Clemson used to have dudes. They used to have Justin Ross. They used to have T. Higgins, Mike Williams. They had guys like that they could rely on out on the outside. Hunter Renfrow was another guy. Did you see anybody on that Clemson offense other than Will Shipley, who is a really good player? But if he is your best player, you were in trouble. And I say that lovingly, Will. He's a really good, solid player. But he can't be your alpha. He can't be your go-to if you're going to compete for a national championship. So either they're not evaluating correctly or they're not developing guys. And then not only that, they're not putting them in situations to succeed because their offense has not evolved with the times. After Trevor Lawrence left, they've not been the same offensively. And we can all argue that a guy like Trevor Lawrence and a guy like Deshaun Watson, they were generational type quarterback talents at that position that really kind of carried that Clemson program. But they also, like I mentioned, had guys on the outside that could win one-on-one matchups and generate explosive plays. And so when you don't have that, you have to be very, very efficient. And it's harder to sustain long drives. I mean, that makes it more difficult on you as an offense. Then factor in that their offensive line is not very good. They're still struggling at that position, and that's kind of been in my opinion, a theme throughout Dabo's tenure there. The offensive line has never been what I would say elite, and you factor that in. You factor in that they had 56 blue chippers on their team compared to Duke's 2, and Duke looked like they belonged on the field. It didn't look like there was a sizable talent disparity. And I know you mentioned turnovers, Graham, and they very much played a big factor in the game. Clemson had 3, Duke had 2. The only reason Duke scored was because they muffed a punt. They muffed a punt and gave Clemson the ball on the 20-yard line. Then they punched it in. That was the only time they scored all night. And for Dabo and company, and this is the last thing I'll say, because defense wasn't really the issue, in my opinion. I thought defensively they played pretty well. Their defensive line, while I think they pressured Riley Leonard pretty well, they didn't dominate Duke's offensive line. They didn't have any sacks on Riley Leonard. So the defense side of the ball wasn't the problem last year. But for Dabo and Clemson, if he does not adapt, then to answer your question, Graham, we have seen the peak of the Clemson run. Because if he does not adapt from an offensive scheme perspective, and if he does not adapt from using the transfer portal, which he loathes, which I get, there are many coaches, I'm sure, that loathe the transfer portal. But you look at a guy like Mike Norvell, you look at a guy like Hugh Freeze, they may not like it, but that is supplementing their roster. That is how they build out their roster. We talked about Dion on Monday. That is how he built his roster. And if you don't do that in today's college football, it's either adapt or die. And Dabo has yet to fully embrace the transfer portal. I don't believe he gave over the keys to Garrett Riley to run his offense. That's the problem. And then when you don't have the continuity that they've had for years, when they had a guy like Tony Elliott, when they had Brent Venables, that was when Clemson was really humming. And since they left, I don't think he has replaced them with the same caliber of coaches they were. So to sum it all up, I don't think Clemson's going to be 6-6 this year or anything like that. But I do anticipate them having 2 or 3 other losses because I don't think the answers to some of their lingering questions are on the roster, especially from talent, explosive playmakers that they are lacking right now. That's not going to get better throughout the year. But what can get better is saying, Garrett Riley, here you go. Like Coach Yost to Coach Boone in the Virginia High School Football Championship, and remember the Titans? Hey, he's kicking my butt, Coach. You take over. Dabo's got to do that, and he's got to embrace the transfer portal, or Clemson is going to be left behind like they were by the Blue Devils on Monday night.
Yeah.
Love it.
Hey,
Go ahead, Graham.
Yeah. I mean, Hampton, you're talking about, we obviously think they're going to be better than 6-6, but they've got strong Southern this week, got Florida Atlantic next week, and then week 4 they take on Florida State.
Yeah.
They're playing in Death Valley, so I guess that'll be a little bit of benefit to Clemson. But I feel like Florida State, y'all talked about it. I didn't get to as much. Florida State played really, really well, and I think they're out on like revenge season. They've got to pay back some
Yep.
they received over the past few years. And I think Clemson will be one of them. And just also,
I agree.
Go into the the next segment of the show. But Hampton, you talked about the transfer portal and Dabo not liking to use it, whereas Deion Sanders in Colorado almost exclusively used it whenever he was filling out a new roster. I think that whether you love it or hate it, you've got to use it to your benefit. You can't let other people take advantage of it and you not do the same. It's
Yep.
on, is it right or wrong? I don't know. But if somebody else is doing it and you're not giving yourself the advantages that you could. And Hampton, like you said, I thought back you just a second.
Yeah.
Like Florida State, I mean, it wasn't that they built their roster out of the transfer portal, but you look at several of their elite playmakers were guys that, hey, we were missing a big time receiver. Let's go get Keon Jackson. Jackson's his name. I know his first name's Keon. Anyway, you go get him on the outside. It's like, all right, that helps.
Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
Coleman.
Yeah, Coleman.
Mhm.
Sorry. That helps Florida State tremendously. That helps Georgia tremendously. And going into the game, we thought that Johnny Wilson would be the number one target, but Keon Coleman is a dude. He is one of those guys. But man, I think that Dabo has got to start to adapt, or he's gonna 8-4 and 7-6 his way to a job that he does not want. So, Hampton,
Last thing I'll say before I kick it back to Chase, if he does not embrace the transfer portal, it is a disservice to his team, and it's almost a dereliction of duty to not take advantage of everything at your disposal.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say.
Gonna leave it at the ACT word of how he wants to describe what's happening in Clemson, South Carolina. Let me get one more question in here before we move on, and this is simply: I want you to vote either thumbs up or thumbs down. Do you think? Okay, so when it comes to, you said, hey, Clemson's got to adapt or die, and you guys covered the transfer portal. That's simple. I mean, truly, that's a start using it. You currently don't. It would probably be better. So I think it's pretty simple. Here's I think the bigger question: is Garrett Riley the kind of offensive coordinator that can put them back into the playoff conversation? Let's kind of let's put Duke out of, let's act like it didn't even happen. Going forward, maybe even next year, can he put them back into? If you think yes, thumbs up; no, thumbs down. Graham, what you got? All right, so we like Garrett Riley. We think that he needs the keys to drive the car, which maybe this was just a learning experience for Dabo. So I'll say one more thing. Hey, Cade Klubnik, I mean, he's a talented quarterback. He won 3 Texas state championships. I mean, he's good. You got a guy. But like you guys said, where are those receivers? It seemed like Clemson would always put out a receiver that just, I mean, a difference maker along with a really good quarterback. So we'll see what happens. Recruiting, transfer portal, changing coaches. I mean, that's what success, looks like, is just turnover and how do you respond to that. Let's keep moving. We're going to touch these two so we can talk about 2 games that we want to really focus on. So, Hampton, I'm going to start with you. Let's go Colorado versus Nebraska. I think that a lot of people are looking forward to this game.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I don't really know if I understand why so much conversation is going around this based on what I saw. But what do you guys think?
So I think people are talking about it because of what Colorado did in Fort Worth. I mean, that kind of electrified the whole country, sparked conversation that is going on this week with people saying some really ignorant things about Deion and that program. And I'm not going to call anybody out. I think some of the takes have been very outlandish. But Colorado is at home, sellout crowd, cheapest ticket, $400 on StubHub, which is absolutely incredible.
Blue State.
And after watching Nebraska versus Minnesota on the first Thursday night of the year, they got a good defense. but I'm not sure offensively unless they might have success run the ball like TCU did on that Colorado front. I think anybody all year is going to have success due to the lack of depth and personnel they have. But I don't believe they're going to be able to go blow for Colorado because I think Colorado with Shador, Travis Hunter, Horn, and Dylan Edwards are going to be able to score on the vast majority of teams they play. So give me the Buffaloes at home, going 2-0, and Dion going to be the center of conversation yet again. 11 o'clock kick, Gus and Joel Klatt. Cannot wait for this game. Yep.
Yeah, Hampton,
Graham, what you got?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's a reason why tickets are so expensive in Colorado. They haven't been good at football since the 90s.
90s, yeah.
Yet they really have bought into what Coach Prime is selling. Of hey, we're gonna get dogs, we're gonna get guys that can play, and we're gonna put them in position to be successful. I think that it's not as good of a matchup for Colorado as I think that some people are giving them credit for. I think Nebraska's defense, did a good job against Minnesota. Regardless of the situation, holding them to 13 points is is good. And Minnesota's one of those teams that is going to almost test your manhood. They're going to try and punch you in the mouth, and will you respond? I think it's a little bit different than what Colorado will do, and especially against TCU. They were trying to air it out. They're trying to spread out your defense, and Colorado took advantage of it. I do think TCU is overrated. I probably would have told you that before week one. Just simply the fact they lost so many people to the NFL draft and were seniors. TCU was good last year, and this year they can be, but they're having to replace so much more than people give them credit for. There was obviously Quentin Johnston and Max Duggan on the offensive
running back.
Yeah, and running back. They had a really good offensive lineman that went in the third or fourth round to the Rams. That I don't think people give as much credit for, but I think this is going to be still a close game if Nebraska can figure out their offense. Jeff Sims really turned the ball over a lot. Again, Minnesota had like three picks, 3 or 4 interceptions. So I think that Nebraska has to take better care of the football. I think that'll set them up better to keep it close to Colorado. If you throw 3 or 4 interceptions, Travis Hunter's going to be there. And I kind of enjoy the conversation going on with Coach Prime in Colorado because it kind of takes the light off of some of the big time programs that have been in college football and kind of breathes a little bit new life. If we were 3 weeks ago, I guess a year ago, if you look back at what people were talking about, they're talking about USC, they're talking about Alabama, talking about Georgia. And I think now at this point, he's added a little bit different, name to the mix in the sense of, we might not have the best talent, but we're never going to quit, and you're never going to be able to count us out. And I think that was really the testament to what they did going to Fort Worth and playing TCU. I've got Colorado winning this one, but I think it's going to be fairly close. I think the line's like 3 points. I think that's probably fair. I think it's going to be fourth quarter. Shador Sanders going to have to make some plays. But yeah, give me Colorado at home for the first exciting game for them.
I like it.
I like it. Hey, let's keep. Well, I'll say this: Nebraska, Matt Rule at the helm, which I think is interesting. I think he needs. I think year 2 might be his. Let him get kind of his program established, his culture. Man, he seems to do that well. He's not the guy. He's not Dion. He's not trying to be, but it does seem like any place that he steps into, give him 2 years and he'll at least turn it around. So I'm kind of excited for him. Just what Nebraska could be. Do they get back on the map? So we'll see. Going to be a fun game. Hey, let's get your quick reaction to Ole Miss versus Tulane. Graham, I'm going to start with you. And if you're sold on Ole Miss, kind of tell me, hey, is this a team that's going to go far? But give me your initial reaction, then answer the second question.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to win. I think this game's going to be closer than people expect again. For the simple fact of you go back a year, the Troy Trojans go to Oxford, Mississippi, and take on Ole Miss. And when you watch the game, Troy's defense played fairly well and really limited Ole Miss's offense. Troy was not able to move the football on offense, so it was a fairly low-scoring game from Ole Miss's perspective. The defense coordinator from Troy, Sheil Wood, goes to Tulane as now defensive coordinator. I think that he'll at least has some experience of, hey, we've done this before. We know what we can expect. I think that I don't think Ole Miss is going to come into this game sleeping because they're going to know that Tulane. They're going to know that Tulane is ranked, and they're going to even know. They're probably going to know even better that they're probably paying Tulane to come play there. I don't know that for sure, but I would just assume that. But yeah, I think that Ole Miss is going to win this one. I think the spread is 7 points, and the total point line is 64. I think Ole Miss wins, but I think it's a one score. It's probably a 7 to 13 point game. Close, but Ole Miss is still going to pull it out. I think Ole Miss just has too many weapons. If Quinshon Judkins keeps doing his thing, Ole Miss is going to be hard to beat, especially for Tulane coming off high at the end of the year in the Cotton Bowl win and beating South Alabama in Week 1. So give me Ole Miss. I think they're going to go. I think they'll go far, and especially the way LSU look, they might be the second best team
Yeah.
in the
Good
West.
point. Good point. Hampton, let's throw it over to your way. What you think?
I agree with Graham's conclusion for sure. Like, I do think that Ole Miss is going to win. I know it's Mercer, but Jackson Dart showed improvement, especially with his accuracy in the intermediate level of the field. He was 18-23 for 334 and some touchdowns. They didn't really run Quinshon much because probably Lane knew that they were going to need him for this game. I mean, he only had 13 carries last Saturday. Had a couple receivers step up, and Trey Harris. Hold on, I'm gonna pull my stat up. But Trey Harris. Hey, Trey Harris had a good game on Saturday,
I don't
folks,
know
in
if
case
you
you
did
didn't
with
know.
Trey Harris.
And Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins, and Kyron Heath. So they all had good games. But I think personally, and I may be totally off base, this is going to be kind of one of those statement games of the weekend. Like, we're all going to be like, okay, Ole Miss may be a little better than we thought. I feel like they're not going to blow out Tulane and beat them by like 30 or 40 points. I could see them winning anywhere from 14 to 21 point range. I just believe Kiffin's going to look to make a splash week 2. They've got the personnel to do it, especially offensively. And maybe after Pete Golding got called out a little bit by Lane Kiffin in the presser after, he'll step up on the defensive side of the ball. So give me Ole Miss by 14 to 21 points.
I like it. Ole Miss almost beat Mercer so bad that Mercer's head coach almost started crying. Just in reference to another beatdown that happened last weekend. They weren't quite there, but maybe one more touchdown might have had Mercer's head coach crying.
So do him and Butch Jones need to form a support group for each other?
They should at least reach out to each other. I'm sure they could use a friend.
I'm sure.
Hey, let's keep moving on to, oh my gosh, I don't even know if, guys, I'm gonna be honest, living in Texas, I don't even know if I want to talk about Texas A&M. Like, you hear about it, just it's like unsolicited advice. It's just unsolicited fandom of 8-4 every single year. So I don't know. I almost want to like tune this out. Maybe listen to the Miami portion of what you guys have to say, because I've heard plenty of A&M's back that anyway. So there's my 2 cents, just to be, if you guys want to be my support group.
Okay. We can be there for you, buddy.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about A&M versus Miami. These guys have is this the third time they've played, or is this just back-to-back? Second time.
I think back-to-back.
Okay, that would make sense. So, Hampton, let's start with you. What do you think about this matchup? Who do you think walks away with the W?
Yeah, I'm going to be real quick with this one. Shout out Tyler Anderson. That's his name, right? Got him right?
Come on. Yeah.
The old Gig'em.
Long-time listener, bro.
Long-time listener of the show. Has a great fishing venture that he's got going on, so shout out to him. But I'm not going to pick Miami to win this game. I am going to pick Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And I thought Miami kind of looked shaky a little bit week 1. Texas A&M, I know they were playing New Mexico State, who is not a very good football team at all. Neither was UMass Auburn fans, who are getting very excited about you beating UMass. They're one of the worst teams in Division I per S&P Plus, but I digress. I thought their offense did look a little more coherent. Connor Weigman looked good. I'm a big believer in him. And, we've talked about their receiving core and Evan Stewart, who's an absolute dude. Malik Muhammad, and Anaya Smith. That was the name that I missed in the SEC preview pod. I think with those guys, they're going to be able to attack vertically, attacking the intermediate levels of the field. And I just don't believe the talent level at Miami is where it needs to be beat a team like A&M. Going to be a close game, though. It was close last year, and they would have won if not for some, okay, I'll say it, cowardly coaching from Mario Cristobal. I thought he was way too conservative going for field goals instead of going for touchdowns, and need to be a little more aggressive. So I think it'll be a fun game, and it's kind of a one of those rubber meets the road for both of these teams. Whoever wins can use it to build upon for the rest of the year, and then whoever loses, there's going to be some major questions about that program going forward. So give me Texas A&M in a close one.
Grant, what you got?
Yeah, Hampton was spot on. I think Miami playing Miami, Miami, Florida. They were
here?
Yeah, they were shaky. They did win convincingly, but Miami of Ohio really struggled on offense. I think they had 200 total yards and only had like 6 or 7 first downs the entire game. So just weren't able to move the football, and I don't necessarily know whether to give that credit to Miami's defense, Florida's defense, or just a bad offensive performance. But I think Texas A&M wins this one. I think that it'll probably be a 10-point game. I think the spread, yeah, I think A&M's favored by 4. I think I'll take A&M by more than that. But I think it's it ends the game is close, and then A&M probably scores an extra one late to put it to maybe double digits. I think when you look at it, who do you trust more, Tyler Van Dyke or Connor Weigman? I think I'm going with Weigman and A&M. Tyler Van Dyke was supposed to be a really highly touted prospect, and has really just ever since the A&M game last year has really not looked special at all. So give me the guy that has the talent, at least can develop a little bit more in Weigman than Van Dyke. So give me Texas A&M.
One last note before we move on to the marquee matchup of the weekend. I will be very interested to see if Texas A&M's offense continues the progression of looking more like a Bobby Petrino offense, or they get back into the old ways of looking like a Jimbo offense. Because if it reverts back, people in College Station are going to be livid. And I'm going to feel like they're going to feel like they've gotten smoke blown all which way in the offseason when they talked about changing offenses. So I would definitely be watching for that on Saturday.
I'll do it, fellas. I'll do it.
Uh-oh.
Hear me out. I think Miami is flying under the radar in the most literal sense of that. That you've got UNC, who's hot, looks amazing, beats an SEC team. You got Florida State, looks amazing, beats an SEC team. And nobody's talked about Miami, who everybody last year was talking about. How good is Miami going to be? And then it was like, hey, give Cristobal some time. Give him some time. Yeah, I think A&M will look good. But, I just to spice it up a little bit, I'm just saying I like it. I'm smelling a little upsets, all I'm saying.
A little upset, okay.
This could be the upset. So, hey, let's move on to the marquee matchup of the weekend. We've got game day. We've got I don't know if you've noticed this, but there has been this expansion from everyone who probably started off kind of like this in a podcast format, started to realize, oh, wait, I can start going to these games, write it off as a business expense and basically have their own college game day, which credit to them, great idea, but everybody is going to be at this game, which I would be too if I got a game to pick to be at this week. So, man, this one's got I would say last year there was a fun kind of like 2, cultured programs, historic powerhouses matching up again in Austin, which I thought was awesome. But this time it's got just a different energy, man. Just a different energy of there's not this Alabama don't blow it, Texas who are you? It's like whoever's going to win it feels like wants to beat the heck out of the other team. which has been just different from last year. It was like, don't lose it, to this one's like, we're killing whoever steps on the field, which I think is awesome. So, anyways, Graham, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind. Texas versus Alabama in Tuscaloosa. How do you see that game going?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it'll benefit Alabama playing at home in front of a sold-out crowd. I think that last year they had a tough game on the road. This time they're playing at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. I think 6 or 7 o'clock kickoff, so kind of an evening start, not a late night game, but an evening start. Last year, I think it benefited Texas that they played at 11 for the simple fact of Alabama's got to get up and got to get ready to go, and I think that obviously Texas was able to take advantage of that. I think this one might be a little bit better for Alabama. The simple fact of you're coming to our place and you're gonna have to wait to get there. You're gonna have to wait all day until you come play us. I think that hopefully based off of what week 1 showed us that we will be able to at least predict it somewhat well for week 2. But the transition from week 1 to week 2 is really up in the air because you have both these teams played subpar opponents, and what is their response to now playing an opponent that is of equal or better stature in the simple fact of they're a big time program. Texas is, Alabama is. Lots of hype around both schools, lots of interesting talk around the quarterback position at Alabama and at Texas. I think that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to quarterback play. You look at the way Texas played against Rice; they threw the football a lot, especially for a game that's supposed to be sort of a cupcake. I mean, Quinn Ewers had 30 passes, completed 19 of them for 260 yards. So I mean, they really aired it out a lot. I didn't watch the Texas and Rice game. I'm not going to waste my time doing that. Not anything for against the pod, but we kind of assumed that it would be a blowout, and it ended up being that way. But the first half, Texas started off slow. I mean, it was
very
16-3 at half, and then Texas comes out in the third quarter and scores 3 touchdowns and responds well. So I think that Alabama, if their defense can cover, like Xavier Worthy, I think that you make Quinn Ewers make tight throws, make difficult decisions. Last year, there were definitely some plays that he was able to take advantage of. I think Alabama's got to do a good job of mixing up schemes, but I think that Sarkisian a great game plan for Alabama, coming to Tuscaloosa. But I think Alabama wins. I think that Alabama's ability to run the football is going to have to show this game. I think that you're going to have to set up Milroe to have easy passes down the field for Alabama to truly be successful. The line is Alabama -7, so they're 7-point favorite. I think that Alabama will probably win by 2 scores. I think Alabama is good enough this year, especially on defense. They looked better in week 1 for their ability to at least not look confused. And I don't think that's really as much ability as it is preparation of, hey, if this happens, this is what we're going to do. And it's okay if it doesn't work great. We're just going to try and live with it. And so Alabama, last year with Pete Golding, there were definitely lots of plays where we were like, what are we thinking? Like, why would this guy go uncovered? I think that Kevin Steele did a better job, at least week 1, of at least having guys, making the right decisions. And the guy that was uncovered was 5 yards down the field instead of 35 yards down the field where there's miscommunication. I think that's going to play into Alabama's hand. I think this Texas team better than people give, better than last year even, but I don't think they're still up to the par of Alabama. So give me Alabama. I'll take them by double digits at home against Bryant-Denny, and at least have to push back on what Texas did to them last year, and at least make them show some respect to the SEC.
Hampton, are you going to continue with your horns up or your horns down?
We're going horns down,
Kind of
baby.
unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on the guy in the white collared shirt.
15-second timeout.
That's right.
Couldn't speak for 15 seconds. Graham, I loved your take on the game, man. And Chase, I thought you really set the stage perfectly.
That's what I do.
I mean, all in a day's work, right?
That's right.
But there is something different. Like, it was big last year. Don't get me wrong. It feels like almost Alabama LSU 2011-ish game of century. and not from the caliber of how good the teams are, but like they're playing at night instead of at 11 o'clock. Everybody and their mama is coming to this game. I mean, every show, late kick, uh, Barstool, Game Day, SEC Nation,
Big
they're
noon
all
kickoff.
descending. Huh?
I said big noon kickoff.
Kickoff, yeah. I don't think they're going to be making it Tuscaloosa, but it'd be great if they did.
Right.
And it just has that feel of like, this is why we love college football, because of matchups like this, because of the build-up. And before I kind of dive into the game here, I do want to mention a few observations from the past week. So we talked briefly at the end of our other pod, Chase, that I was very impressed with Jalen Milroe. And I know I'm not crowning him the Heisman Trophy winner after week one like some are, but the improvement from last year to this year cannot be overstated. He looked like a completely different player, and I think as a lesson for me and for us really as a pod, I feel like we were almost too hard on a guy who got thrust into action when he simply was not ready. He did not win that job. He wasn't ready to be the starting quarterback last year, but he is this year. And what I think has been pretty obvious, especially after week one, Jalen Milroe's had this job for maybe since February, maybe since March. Like, I think there were some reports of, oh, it's close. Oh, it's this. I really honestly think that Milroe has had it and they've known what they had for a while. And I know they brought in Tyler Buckner. I know they brought him in to maybe add some experience, but that may have been because they didn't feel like Ty Simpson was ready in the event something happened to Jalen Milroe. That could have very well been the reason, but I think this staff is confident in Jalen Milroe and the offense they're wanting to run, and his ability to hit the deep ball when Middle Tennessee State was run blitzing and committing 7 or 8 to the box. He took advantage of that like a quarterback should. I mean, he made the throws. The throw he made to Amari Knoblack may have been his best throw of the game.
Beautiful throw.
Great touch. But more than that, what impressed me was the anticipation that he threw it with. Like before even he crossed like the linebacker, like he was getting ready to throw. He knew, he anticipated, threw to a spot. That is the mark of a good quarterback. And we already know what he can do with his legs. And what really excites me is, and this goes for Texas too, I don't think either team showed a lot in week one. They showed maybe a third to a fourth of the playbook. And from Alabama's perspective, there was not a whole lot of QB run game in there. There was not a whole lot of RPO in there. And that's what Jalen Milroe does probably best, is use his legs. And I'm really interested to see, especially with the more heavy usage of 12 personnel, which is 1 back and 2 tight end. I'm really interested to see what Tommy Rees has crafted up when he's been in the lab all summer in Tuscaloosa from the quarterback run game, because that having a quarterback that can run occupies another defender and really helps your run game overall for your running backs or your traditional run plays, because someone's got to stay committed to you. Same thing if someone wants to QB spy Jalen Milroe, that takes the guy out of pass coverage. So you have some built-in advantages that an offensive coordinator like Tommy Rees can really take advantage of. And I think last year Alabama only won by 1. And there was this, whole thing. If Quinn didn't get hurt, Texas would have won. And I get that for the first drive or two, he looked incredible. He did, especially the script that Sark came out with. But, and I think this is a big but, the deep balls that he hit on those couple drives were an anomaly. He is really not that great of a deep ball thrower. Like, he is very inconsistent. Now, intermediate area of the field, I know I've said intermediate a lot tonight, but he's really sharp on those. But a deep ball, he struggles. And Graham, I was going to use the stat that you sent me earlier, but I was kindly asked not to not jinx it for Saturday by a loyal listener, Austin. So I'm not going to mention that stat.
Yeah.
But there was something that happened against Rice, and you can, if you're our listeners, you can look at look at it out there and see the stat for yourself when it concerns Quinn Ewers and his deep ball. And I think, as opposed to last year, Kevin Steele, Alabama's going to play an aggressive style of defense. We talked about that before the year, but it was even more evident on Saturday against Middle Tennessee State. I haven't seen Alabama defense kind of run around like that and play with that intensity, that edge, the discipline that they played with. I haven't seen that in a long time. And Jimmy Stein made a great point, friend of the show. He made a great point that even when the backups came in, there wasn't much of a drop off. How many times in the Pete Golding era did the backups come in and all went to crap? A bunch.
Starters with that. I mean, we had
Starters too. But that speaks to coaching. And I believe that Kevin Steele and the secondary of Alabama is going to be able to really throw some things at Texas that's going to make it difficult for them. Are they going to make plays? Of course. They've got Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah.
They got a really good tight end. They've got talent. But it's key to, pun intended, that Jalen Key and Malachi Moore return to practice today. They're more than likely going to play in the game. And Alabama's secondary has a lot of moving pieces that they can kind of rotate and mix and match depending on the matchups afforded to them. I mean, you can move Terry on from outside corner to star when you go dime and put Malachi at the dime back position at money, and you can put Trey Amos at the outside. There's a lot that you can do, I think, and they're more equipped this year to combat that Texas offense. Two more quick points. Another thing that I think stood out in the Texas-Rice game, the offensive line for Texas really struggled in pass protection. Quinn Ewers got hit a lot. And I think Kevin Steele saw that and said, it's going to be like Luke Skywalker attacking the Death Star, baby. We're going to make a trench run, and we're going to expose that weakness. And I think they're going to try to rattle them a little bit. They're going to use that Raptor package where they put 3 offensive linebackers on the outside linebackers on the field. And
Adapt or die, baby. Adapt or die.
We're going to get a new position at the University of Alabama. But they're going to put Q-Rob, Braswell, and Turner on the field. And they did that last year, but not to – I don't feel like it was as effectively run as it was in the first game against Middle Tennessee State, which, again, coaching. But I think they're going to really be able to pressure Ewers and hit him kind of like Rice did, which when he's pressured, like many quarterbacks, your efficiency and accuracy decline. So that's what I'm looking for on the defense side. Last thing, the matchup of the game is Alabama's offensive line versus the Texas defensive line. Their D-line is really talented. They've got some dudes up front. They're a really good run defense. But I believe in this Alabama offensive line. I don't think they're going to get whooped. If anything, it'll be a stalemate where, we win some, they win some. But it's not going to be like what it was last year, which was the two keys to the game last year were that Texas defensive line was able to dominate, and I mean dominate Alabama's offensive line for the most part. And it was such a decided advantage that Alabama could not get anything going. It was that, and it was 17 penalties that kept Texas drives going and limited Alabama drives. I don't think that's happening this year. I think Alabama's going to be much more disciplined. I think they're going to be able to lean on that offensive line, and especially in the second half as the game wears on and you lean on them. I think they're eventually going to make a breakthrough and take over that game. I sounded like make a breakthrough. All right, Jason Kirkland. But I think they're going to be able to control the line of scrimmage, and I believe Jalen Milroe is going to be able to take the plays that are there. I'm going to be interested to see how he does in the middle of the field, those type of passes. We know he's got the long ball down. I think he can make the short throws, but can you take advantage of those when you might get behind the chains a little bit, and you've got to make those plays to keep drives moving? That's going to be key, but ultimately I think the offensive line for Alabama is the key to this game. I trust in them. I don't think they're going to have a I think they're going to have a decided advantage at the position in every game they play this year. It's no different on Saturday night. I'm picking Alabama, like Graham, by double digits. Statement game for the Tide. I think it'll be close for a half, and then second half, Alabama starts to pull away.
Love it. I don't think there's really anything more to add. You guys covered that super well. The one thing that I'll add to talk about just the vibe going in. Everybody was excited last year, and then I think when the game ended, everybody was like, "What was that? Like, what did I just watch?
Yeah.
That Alabama committed that many penalties. Texas quarterback, it just didn't feel complete. It felt like there was something lacking." And this, it's like, hey, I left with my cup a little bit empty last time. Give me all you got. So what I think this game comes down to, and as we'll get out of here, I think it comes down to Texas has got a pretty decent defense this year. Like, I'll give credit's due. Like you said, their weak
they're
spot
solid.
is their O line for sure. Their defense though
Agreed.
is actually not bad at all, and they've got dudes at wide receiver, got a good quarterback, but I think Alabama's got a great defense. I think them and Texas both really good defenses. When everyone is covered, if you're running an offensive play and everybody gets covered, I think that Milroe has the advantage to go make something happen.
I like
And
it.
that's I really think that when you look back, there'll be pivotal moments. I'm hoping that 3rd and 6, that if you're Texas, hoping you can get off the field, I think that everything's going to be covered. Texas, you did everything right, but then Milroe escaped with his legs. So we hadn't seen that, though, in a while. You know, Bama quarterbacks, we hadn't seen that in a little while. So maybe we bring that
Bryce
back.
was afraid to run half the dang time.
Hey, no reason to bring Bryce into that, all right? No reason, you know what I mean? The greatest quarterback of Alabama history, and you're just going to throw him in the gutter like that. At the end of the show, I mean, just when we know we didn't have time for another segment, but let's let everybody get out of here. Hey, grateful that you take time to listen to this. Again, share it with a friend. That's the coolest way that you can say that you enjoy the show. Easiest way to say Roll Tide is just share it with a friend. But the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until next time, chew on that. Boom.